And tonight, some really intense Doctor Who debate that will get you behind the sofa as we go live with the Centrevere channel.
No. Get working. It's a Brisbane sweatshop. Get on with it. I don't do unions. Hello, everybody. Welcome, one and all. I'm taking you back. Saturday, 25th of January, 1975, through to mid-Feb 75. I was 6. And, wow. Alien before its time. Sci-fi concepts. We weren't with the cosy lollipop of Unit. We were out there in the stars and we were getting scared. We were riveted as kids, weren't we? It seemed very adult and still then mixed with a little bit of green bubble wrap just to have a bit of fun and poke humour. Anyway, got all my favourite panellists on. We've got our favourite segments. So what could go wrong? You can see here the Radio Times with their lovely little adverts for each programme. Takes you back, doesn't it? The survivors of planet Earth lie in cryogenic suspension, but the doctor finds there's been a sinister intrusion. It's all you need, isn't it? It's all you need. Oops, there's a problem. Tune in, folks, and let's get on with it, yeah? So, as the Radio Times did review it, they give it 5 stars out of 5. They said, isn't it great to get away from Earth? The staggering 13.6 million for part 2, the largest audience since 1965. Holmes either ignored or was unaware that Who had shown humanity fleeing catastrophe before with 1966 as the Ark. And then the 11th Doctors in 2010 did a similar thing with The Beast Below. But as the Radio Times review says, Holmes' remorselessness and his confident four-parter is by far the superior one. So let's get my friends on. Michelle, first cab on the rank. Hiya, Michelle.
Hello.
Is this one you had seen before?
No, so this is the first time.
Oh, I always like to hear your fresh take on it. That'll be interesting. Hugh, it was your... How many times have you seen this?
Oh, that's a difficult one. It's sort of, it's one of those ones which I think is as a comfort blanket, as you've described some of them before, Brendan. It's one of the ones you go to, and it's not necessarily the one that I go to because it's my favourite, but because it is what it is. It's a new start.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. And we can't do reviews without good old John. Curmudgeonly John, I'll call him. Oh, hiya, John.
Curmudgeonly, is it?
Oh, yeah, I'll go for it.
I'm going to start stroking my lapels if you're not careful.
Oh, God. So we had a good time at Milton Keynes Utopia, didn't we, John? We met...
The bits where you weren't about, it was great, yeah.
Yeah. He met everybody, did John. He was talk about crowding.
I was attacked.
So,
John, it's too early in the show to be mentioning stroking.
True, yeah, too true. You will find plenty of strokers about. So, of course, we've got What Would the Shooty Doctor Do? We've got the Intimacy Watch. We've got Which Was the Best Keochwe Cliffhanger. We do mention the Fear Factor. We kind of will loosely mention our criteria, but we know the criteria by now, and we know what we're going to give it a judgment of. We're just going to enjoy the review. So, what I will say is, I suppose let's get on with it. To me, everyone, I mean, where do you start with Ark in Space? I mean, everybody mentions the bubble wrap slug, the bubble wrap arm. But at the time, I wasn't saying that as a 6-year-old.
No, and the whole point about something like this is, as long as the actors can take it seriously, then it sells it and it gets sold. So I'm not a big fan of worrying about what things look like as long as the actors do it justice.
Yeah, and John, last night I watched it again, but not with the Blu-ray effects. I thought, no, I'll get the original Nerva Beacon. I'll get the original stuff.
I deliberately chose to watch it with the effects this time, just to be awkward, I suppose, or curmudgeonly for that matter. Can I just mention about bubble wrap? In the defence of the Ark in Space, bubble wrap was unknown at that time. John Friedlander used it. It wasn't something we weren't used to getting Amazon packages then, or as many. If anything was delivered, it was delivered by Case Cataloger or some such similar back in those days. But bubble wrap wasn't really known. So, in his defense, he used something at the time which not a lot of people would have seen. So, I'll give it a pass.
Yeah, I mean,
And when he's slamming his hand on the console, oh, I was waiting for pop, 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 but we didn't hear that. So I'll give him props for no pop, pop.
Yeah,
Yes,
Noah had to learn that the best way to do it is one at a time, not 10 at a time.
there was that bit in the when the bubble wrap Ruin was behind the vent, and it was squashing past, and of course now, yeah, I mean, but you're right, John. The point is, and actually you were saying it as well, Hugh. Basically, as long as it helps our imagination, that's what we need. We don't need the top-notch Disney best special effects. We just need something like this. I think that's a beautiful model, actually. I always liked that design. And of course, we had this TARDIS crew, Harry, Sarah, and Tom Baker, and they were getting established. And boy, did I love the interplay in this.
Mm-hmm. Poor Harry, he never got shown in the TARDIS. He got robbed. Or poor Harry got robbed.
You have to remember, this is only their second outing as a threesome, and only their first outing as in the TARDIS together, and they come pretty much fully formed. I mean, there was a bit of jiggery-pokery in how the season was filmed, because they used the sets, obviously, for Revenge of the Cybermen and Ark in Space together. So Sontaran Experiment had already been made by this point. But nonetheless, these three have knitted together almost instantaneously and become a classic TARDIS crew.
Yeah, and actually, I think it's well written, Hugh, in the way that Harry and the Fourth Doctor have their kind of tension. Sarah and Harry have their tension, but it's not hatred. It's cleverly written so that you can see that deep down they support each other, but certain things irritate each other.
I mean, I think the thing is that Ian Motter does a really good job of playing Harry, who I think in this is maybe not quite as well written as in some cases, because he's written a bit dumb, although he becomes more intelligent, obviously under the influence of the Doctor, as the Doctor says. I do think that it seems on screen that they have a very good relationship off screen. And again, the fact that pretty much the whole of the first episode is a two-hander between two people that is only sort of just formed, and it gels well. So that's very good as well.
Well, thanks to Stephen O'Neill. You're mentioning things that are in the good old. If you go to the fandom website, and you'll see loads of details. I often use a few of them. The Bennett oscillator, of course, as a cheeky reference to the director. Yes. Yeah, I mean, nice cheeky little bits like this. Of course, this is the other thing. When you talk of Ark in Space, you've got Nerva Beacon, the repeat of the set, the actual set, the design by Roger Murray Leach, and the bubble wrap. There's certain things that come to mind very, very quickly. I mean, this is a simple trick, but it so works. I love the way they kind of dampened the sound effect. Sometimes you get it echo, depending on where we are in which story, and other times their footsteps are kind of silenced, aren't they? So it's kind of got that lovely spacey effect.
Yeah, and it's very nice. You do wonder whether it's almost like you could have had a proper arc with a C as well as an arc with a K with this, and they sort of do in some parts of it. But it's an interesting use of getting a set that looks really good and then using it properly.
It's an ideal example of what Doctor Who does best, doing the very best with very little. And given what we've just had, and I hate to mention that again because we had 8 weeks of misery having to review what we just had, but Doctor Who does that. Give Doctor Who a BBC drama budget of the 70s, and everybody just does their best to do their best with it, whether it's from the writer all the way through to costume designers and designers of the class of Roger Murray Leach, and it just works. It just works. Everybody's on their A game.
Yeah, I had to, when I was watching it again last night, and it's your first time, Michelle, you said, watching it last night with Jamie, I was saying, I cannot believe, you have to go, wow, Tom Baker is so early doors as the Doctor, but he's so established, so powerful, so charismatic. And then you think of what we've just had, and you think, I don't think he got there even in the end.
Nope.
No, and that's sad. It was a Doctor who never found him how to be a Doctor with the last season. And here we are right off the bat, his second story, and he's already commanding himself as the Doctor.
I mean, where do you start with him? Well, we'll mention stuff later. Yeah,
he does the famous Homo sapiens speech, which basically defines what the Doctor is, and is really sort of a curriculum vitae almost for the Doctor, and his attitude towards the human race is just perfect. But also, without mentioning what we've just been through in terms of current Doctor Who, just with that nod to the past, you just can't imagine John Pertwee doing this. That's how much Tom Baker is in command of this role so early on. You got to take your hat off to the man.
Yeah. He was experimental. He was trying things. He was being brave with his decisions. And this was such a successful story that I know we all know this, but just to remind everybody that they repeated it in an omnibus version before season 13 started with Terror of the Zygons. It was so popular. It's a hell of a launch pad. That you got another double dose, and of course it was rare then to get anything extra, so I do remember getting it, and oh god, yeah, because it was one of those tried and tested ones. I remember Ark in Space. I mean, I remember reading the Target book, etc., and really having good memories of this. So just a few quick details as we start off. Well, the ratings is the other one people mention. I know there's reasons sometimes for the part 2 one, however, those are the facts. It's funny though, you see the large numbers, but I know every week on the Sunday we were doing the ratings watch with with this era, and can you see part 2 down to part 4? They lost 3.4 million. Can you imagine one of my shows? I'd be absolutely going off it. They lost 3.4 million. But it was successful.
They would cry for ratings today. Even part 1, 9.4 million. They would cry for that today.
I mean,
and as I pointed out before, the overall audience is actually bigger. Yeah, it's more split, but there are many more people in the UK than there was in.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's the ratings for you. And I mean, Stephen O'Neill's been doing a good job of just saying some of these. Of course, this echoed the Alien, should say it the right way around. The 1979 Alien echoed this story. As a few people have been saying, this was the only opening sequence of this era with that tinted pink and green that ended up making it look brown. They never used it again. Vira was written to be black and possibly Haitian. John Lucarotti famously scripted it, still got paid, but it had to be so heavily recrafted that his name wasn't put on the titles. There was originally, get this, a scene where in the final stages of larval infestation, Noah's head splits open and cracks into a torrent of acidic goo. That was cut because it was too graphic. When we come to the burning issues, I might just raise that again, but I don't know. I know Philip Hinchcliffe was very careful, and this is really early doors for him as a producer. And decisions like this, you've got to really make oh my gosh, a BBC producer making a decision editorially about what is broadcast. Oh my god, do they do that anymore? But anyway, there you go. And
you're being topical.
I'm being too topical. Sorry. There's enough producers about, aren't there, to make a decision.
Listen, you've just dated this stream now. If you go back and watch this in years to come, no wonder what you're talking about.
Oh, exactly. That's it. That's the beauty of New Who as well, isn't it? Sometimes you think, what they're talking about, pronouns. What are they? Anyway, Kenton Moore famously, they really heavily cut the scene where he was tortured, internally. When you think back now, everybody, I'll start with John. When you hear of a scene that could have been in, okay, Philip Hinchcliffe has to make a decision. When you see Kenton Moore upset that one of his key moments as a character was taken out, what do you think now in retrospect?
Well, that was the calm before the storm, because Philip Hinchcliffe, I think, under the direction of his head of department, made that call. He wasn't going to cut it. And later on, when he got a bit bolder and didn't cut, he got into trouble, and Doctor Who lost Philip Hinchcliffe as a result. So, I was going to bring this up till later, but now you've mentioned it, Brendan, this scene, had it played out, the Doctor refuses upon the whole scene plays out, the Doctor refuses upon Vira's request to kill Noah, to use the Staser to kill him. And that is the Doctor. That's just what the Doctor is and does, and everything else is great about him. And then you compare it to the high kicking that the 15th Doctor does over the sperm and the egg of the nearly departed or dearly departed boyfriend of Belinda just passed. And it just shows you how quite early on Tom has this Doctor of Pat, and it would have been wonderful, absolutely wonderful, to have seen him perform that scene where he just basically testifies to the character of the Doctor, that even though this man is mutating to something horrible, even though this creature is eating him from the inside out, the Doctor can't bring himself to kill a life. If for good or for bad, that's the Doctor. That is the Doctor. And certain of the production team who should know better should have maybe sat down and watched that and read about that before putting pen to paper recently.
Yes. Hugh, where do you stand on this one?
I mean, I can understand why it was cut. I do think then it's an awfully awkward cut that all of a sudden they just go, "What happened there?" And that's the thing in terms that I think I remember watching it going, "What happened?" And obviously at that stage you didn't necessarily get the explanation of the cut happening and stuff like that. That's much later. But yeah, I can understand why for a kids program, like Saturday tea time, you're not getting one of the main characters begging to be killed.
A part of that scene where the Staser hits the floor is lifted from earlier in the scene where Vira throws it to the Doctor for him to shoot and kill Noah. And then it becomes jumbled up. So you're quite right, Hugh. They had to make the best of what they had to make some sort of semblance of sense out of it. And I give it a pass. It just about works. But yeah, I regret the cut. I would like to have seen it, because ultimately the Doctor does what the Doctor does.
I mean, Michelle, the editing of it, which, you take the bits from the cutting room floor that are left to make the best of it, but it almost had a sense of the butchered brain of Morbius to it, because, like Hugh said, I didn't understand what the hell was going on. Did you, when you saw it?
No, I was like, what was going on? But again, I understand why they needed to cut it. I mean, that is a little too gruesome, even for Doctor Who standards, especially in the early 70s. So I could see, and it kind of echoes later on the complaints of Mary Whitehouse of, this era was being a little too gruesome.
Yeah, she was there haunting us.
He was hovering.
She was hovering. Small cast, interesting. Sometimes a smaller cast, and you can get a tighter feel for everything, even though there's thousands and thousands apparently there. So yes, Roger Murray released we were lucky to have for a while, Plans of Evil and various ones before he went on to Hollywood and various other things. Dr. Simpson on his A game. I love some of the sequences, in the solar flares, and just that the instruments he uses just to kind of get you on edge. So yeah, happy with all that sort of thing. Now, you know, I always have a little kind of we're Doctor Who fans, so I'll be intrigued what you all think when you see parts of this episode story. What also it reminded you of in Doctor Who. So we'll have a quick moment. Okay, so I'll rattle through these, but please tell us what you think as well. I mean, of course, the web planet. So Doctor Who's learning. I mean, we are evolving. The Riven, I thought, was an improvement on this in some ways. In some ways, we didn't have the legs, but seeing the legs on the Zarbi, you get the impression it's a man inside. So I don't know. There's that element to it. We even with Frontius and the Tractators, there's an element of this insect version is always hard to do in Doctor Who, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, best legs are the thing. Legs are always the giveaway with these costumes because in those days, not only did not have the budget, didn't have the computer graphics to be able to tidy things up. Yeah, I prefer the lack of legs in the Wern to the sort of showing of the legs there. With I think the Zarbi looks as though he works for Pickford's and he's like chaps are struggling with something in his back as he moves.
Yeah, he's an old codger. Oh, he
does look a bit awkward in that position. Maybe he's got hemorrhoids. That Zarbi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he might be a rogue Zarbi at Glastonbury, and he's not bothered queuing for the toilets. I think that's what's going on there.
Certainly had some sort of accident.
And then, of course, we've got our friend. When Axons are ill, that's what they look like. No, Seeds of Doom. We went through that phase with Philip Hinchcliffe where there were a lot of stories where you had a human transformed, converted, and you went through their process of really being conflicted. So that's why I've mentioned the Seeds of Doom for a second there. Of course, I don't know. You know the plastic encasing of the in the Ark. It just takes me back to this, these plastic kind of casts and the lovely moment in the Five Doctors when their eyes go everywhere.
The good thing about at least those Time Lords who had been frozen by Rassilon fitted. Some of the people in the Ark were sort of. I think Ronnie Corbett was hiding in one of those little. Because he was a little bit tiny, so at least these two fitted perfectly. They were snug.
Madger, I did think when you watch the Ark now, I mean, I'm sorry, but you've got your 2025 head on, and I'm thinking everybody has to be thin, everybody has to be a certain height and shape, as you were saying. There's one who didn't quite fit. There'd be a reference now to we take all sorts. We all dread getting on a plane with somebody who's maybe been to McDonald's as a hobby, and you just get this. I didn't see anything in the Ark in Space for those.
There probably would have been some gender neutral boxes as well there. Just to make sure, yeah.
Oh God, can you imagine it?
Again, though, I mean, for the time, it is a specially select crew, so obviously, in the slightly less PC times, that would be a crew that's fit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we could argue. No, I know what you're saying. You could have somebody who's very cerebral, but Stephen Hawking, maybe. They'd have to have a special No, I know what you mean. The Deadly Assassin I referenced because you had the moment in part 3 where Tom Baker. I think it's Robert Holmes loves doing this. You electrodes on your head. You're risking your life for the human race. He's done it a few times, hasn't he? And my favorite species, and he goes for it in part 3, and that so I thought, a touch of Deadly Assassin there.
Given Robert Holmes' sort of penchant for being a bit brutal, we were quite happy to get the electrodes up here and not a bit further down.
Oh yes, very true. That was the panel we didn't go to in the Utopia, wasn't it? I didn't fancy that one.
Me neither.
Although going to the Benjamin Cook one was, I mean, trying to get John to go to that one was probably like putting electrodes on him. He was like, "No, I don't want to go." It was like
I don't do fans or Uber fans, as you well know.
It was like dragging a kid to school who doesn't want to go. I don't want to go. So anyway, the things you do. It was a good one. So and of course, when you look at the Tomb of the Cybermen set and Ark in Space, of course, that's one of the the real positives in Ark in Space, I think, was the way they set it, the way they did the angles, the mirrors, the use of it really cleverly teased that it was bigger. And of course, the Tomb of the Cybermen did that very well. I mean, it's a hell of a set, the Tomb of the Cybermen one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The Ark is better. I mean, unfortunately, the Tomb suffer from cellophane overload, whereas in the Ark in Space, they spent a bit of money on that, albeit BBC money. They put the money up front to make something spectacular for the time in an electronic studio, and it succeeds marvelously. Tomb was done at Ealing in the main, so they could control that better on film. So, given the fact that this is in BBC TC1, TC8, whatever it was, this is a really spectacular set.
It is. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful.
And it's used really well. So they're sort of like shooting into rooms from outside rooms with slightly different angles. So it can use the same room in different ways. Is very clever and very sensible.
I did my homework for this, Hugh, just so Brendan knows I do a bit of research for these streams. I did my homework and discovered that Roger Murray Leach designed that set so bits could be taken out from the top and bottom to allow the camera to come in to get different shots. So not only was it well designed, it had great functionality as well. So credit to him, indeed.
Very good, very good. Of course, I don't know why the green in Doctor Who always works. I threw in the Green Death just for a kind of a reference point. And of course, I think I see the invisible enemy in this story to a degree. It's still, how do we deal with the monster? The invisible enemy, the nucleus, had a very difficult time, didn't he? He probably should have stayed in the brain. But when he
I
was
always liked the nucleus. I don't know what people had about it. I like the nucleus.
Do you?
I do. Bit of a Ben Cook.
So there you go, a bit of a time Eddie there, and of course this is what they earn their money here. Burning Issues. Now, you might be sat there, everybody, saying it's Ark in Space, it's a classic. Burning Issues, do me a favour. Oh, well, just hang around. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, for me, there's one burning issue I want to ask, and it takes us wider in Doctor Who, which is we are where we are, but there's a lot of Doctor Who fans who might be yearning for something that we may not possibly feasibly ever be able to get. So my question tonight about this is, knowing what you saw in Ark in Space, when you saw Noah and you saw him gradually evolve into the Ruin, and so therefore you saw a tortured man, and there were editorial decisions to be made there. The idea of body horror in Doctor Who, is it something, do you think a future producer could ever broadcast nowadays, or do you think that time has gone? John?
Oh, well, yeah. That came out of left field. Okay. You mean nowadays? You mean television nowadays? Is that wrong?
Yeah. So as you're talking, I'll show a few little clips of various body horrors in Doctor Who or torture in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Do you think that could be done now with safe spaces and trigger warnings and all that stuff?
I haven't given it much thought. I would imagine they could. It all depends on how these things are handled and written, and if they're written sensitively enough. Certainly, some of the stuff that Doctor Who was doing then probably wouldn't go down well now. But most of the Hinchcliffe era was all about possession and people losing control of their mind, their bodies, whatever shape or form that was. This was something that obviously obsessed Robert Holmes, and he was able to take Philip Hinchcliffe with him on this. In terms of body horror now, we may well have difficulty nowadays, given the sort of debates we're having, regarding how people identify, what they choose to do to their bodies. Unfortunately, it may well be stated by some that we exist in an era where body horror has become all too real, perhaps, for certain people with certain conditions. But I don't think the Doctor Who should not do this now, provided it's sensitively done. Because one of the scariest things ever, and you and Hugh have done work on this on the channel before, Brendan, is about people's, mental health, about control of their, losing control of what they believe to be their sense of self in whatever circumstance that may be. And that probably more so than Daleks and Yetis on the Loose and Tooting Beck is probably psychologically more terrifying than anything else Doctor Who or any other programme can do. There's space for it, provided it's sensitively done.
I mean, just before I move on to the other two panelists here, John, just in your personal opinion, having been a Doctor Who fan from a kid, is there a moment, if you could be honest now, Mary Whitehouse isn't listening, when you think Doctor Who went too far?
Never.
No?
Never. No, not for me. Absolutely not for me. No, never has done. Never to do. I mean, I understand now, while the portrayal of Magnus Greel, or you have there Sharaz Jek, having suffered some sort of accident and being deformed, may now be seen by some as to be unacceptable, portraying, if you like, disfiguration as some and equated with horror and evil and wickedness and that sort of. I could understand objections to that nowadays. Back in the day, for me, that was all working just fine. If anything, the point of view of Sharaz Jek, he was the put upon one. He was very much the victim, not because of what had happened to him, but generally how Morgus had traduced him as a person. So yeah, we have to be very sensitive at this. I get that now, and then they go to the opposite extreme in terms of what they do with Davros. In that we can't. So if you're in a wheelchair or a body life support system, therefore you can't be portrayed as a villain. That's just all nonsense, and we know that to be nonsense. So I understand that some of the old stuff may well affect people nowadays, but personally, then and now, I don't find it offensive. But then again, I'm not as sensitive or easily triggered as a lot of people are, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle, when you look at the Hinchcliffe era particularly, were we just lucky in the time era we're in, what was allowed in TV? Because I do wonder whether, when I have Doctor Who fans in the threads writing to me about what the producers should be doing with Doctor Who now, I agree with them. I just don't know if any TV producer will even ever do it.
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm struggling on this one because horror is very popular right now in books and media and some also in manga and other things. I just don't know if they would have the guts to put it on TV.
Yeah, I mean, the same question I asked of John. Is there a period? You've seen a lot of Doctor Who. When you look back now, and it's between us, was there a moment when you thought, "Oh God, that went a bit far"?
No, and I think now would be a good time to bring horror back. I think that's maybe what it would need is a more scientific version of horror.
Yeah.
I'll qualify my last statement.
Sorry?
Can I qualify my last statement?
Yeah.
Because in terms of body horror, no, there isn't. There's probably one standout in terms of the classic series. It's when the Doctor attacks Perry. That's an issue. I think when Doctor went too far, when the Doctor physically tries to strangle him. That's something I would say the programme should deeply regret. That was a mischaracterization of the Doctor. But so I just wanted to qualify that in terms of there not being a never. So yeah, there's an example. In terms of the whole body horror stuff, no, I'm not triggered by it, and nor would I be today.
Yeah.
And I think that's something everyone regrets now.
So Hugh, you've had time to think about it. Davros, because he might offend people, as John said, has been changed. I've heard in an interview him say the same about the Cybermen in the future, RTD. Luckily, he might be off the show, so that might not happen. But the point is, you might replace RTD, but another TV producer might be thinking the same, that we can't offend the kids. We can't have parents complaining. Body horror is something we just cannot touch.
I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned the Cybermen. I was thinking of episodes in New Who where it happens, and obviously the Bill Potts thing is quite is properly horrific, and in part that's because of them going back to the more primitive design of Cybermen, the use of the Cybermen, the transformation in the ones with Roger Lloyd Pack, quite horrible. There's quite a lot of body horror in the New Who. Whether that's now gone completely, I'd be surprised if it's gone completely, but then I think that probably depends on whether Russell's about. I think a different producer might allow more things, because we obviously had more things in the past. There is really quite a lot of it in New Who. So it's not New Who, it's RTD2.
Yeah. I mean, Farsight here, one of my all-time favourite moments in Doctor Who is when the Russian soldier who you think is dead opens his eyes tethered to the longboat. We all have those moments, don't we? And as John said, I agree with you, John, that ultimately, while I might have asked the question, I came through the same era as you, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I didn't have nightmares actually about it. I know some people, the papers and some TV reviewers we've all seen, they're waffled on about, are we scaring the kids? Are they having nightmares? The answer in my case was no. I loved it. In fact, John, I think this is why we watched it, isn't it? It thrilled us.
That's why it was there. That's why Doctor Who exists. It's there to scare and horrify and terrify. And then maybe we can get a little lesson taught in there about history or science, all to the good as well. But it is, look, I was quite happy when Doctor Who was tea time terror for tots, as Jean Root described it in the Daily Express, I think it was. That's its function, because it's in a safe place. It's not in the cinema where they're on their own. They're there, as Tom Baker would say, having their fish fingers with mum on one side, dad on the other, grandpa, brother, sister, whoever it is. It's a safe environment for children to experience that. And in many ways, that's a better way for children to be brought up than, if you like, the bubble wrapped. See what I did there? We have human beings now not allowing them to experience the world in all its savagery that exists today.
Yeah, you've got, and let's face it, I think TV producers, the trouble is, we need TV producers like we need politicians who are brave and courageous with their principles and their decisions, and stick to it, because if you are trying to entertain families, there has to be a version of tension or jeopardy. In most dramas, there has to be. And in Doctor Who's case, it normally was the thrill of the adventure, the mystery, the what's going to happen next. Somebody's trapped, somebody's stuck, will they die? It was that kind of thing. And of course, the reveal was the classic for part one, wasn't it? You saw a kind of dishevelled hand, an emaciated half a face, you heard a whispering, croaky voice. Your imagination was on fire, and the last thing you need is people sat in the BBC or somewhere else going, oh, I think we will censor for the family. We will actually just not show that. Isn't
this Russell's favourite Doctor Who?
Yes. This is the irony of it, though, isn't it? It's like, I enjoyed it as a kid, says RTD, but you're not going to get it.
Yeah, and why did you enjoy it, Russell? You enjoyed it because there's a certain license in terms of what you can do with kids. I think Neil Gaiman said something that it's okay for kids for that, but it's a bit too scary for adults. And I think that's the thing. Adults are scared about what happens to children. Children deal with it. There's this whole idea about it being watched from behind the sofa. But it wasn't really watched from behind the sofa. That's kids just going, oh, look, that's quite scary. But they are actually sitting in front of the television watching it willingly, happily, enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's a family experience.
And it should be, and that's up to the families, isn't it? You shouldn't have your kid in the bedroom on the iPhone watching it. You should actually all be sat downstairs.
It was meant for everyone to sit down and watch this together. And if it was too intense, and I've heard those stories where kids freaked out, and the mom and the dad said, okay, no, let's watch something else.
Yeah. My mum was just telling me the other day about Genesis of the Daleks Part 1. She's never said this to me, but she said, your back stiffened. I was sat next to Mum. She knew what was going to happen. She'd read the blooming title. I hadn't. And of course, it's the moment you see Davros for the first ever time in Doctor Who history. And we all know the moment, you know, Sarah stumbling in there. And my mum said I had to look through my hands. I never thought I watched Doctor Who like that. And she said, you were doing that and looking away. You were playing this kind of, can I cope with all the senses of fear that he's, you know, I mean, I thought, fascinating, absolutely fascinating. The other question I've got, though, before I move on fully with Ark in Space, everyone, is on this burning issue topic, is with all this kind of, I don't know, the self-censorship that goes on now in TV production. The other reason I mentioned body horror is if RTD and producers like him have an issue with showing disability as evil, like Davros, we're never going to get an emaciated master because of burns victims. We're never going to get somebody's blind. I worry that basically we're just never going to get anywhere near some of the great villains in Doctor Who history because of the fear of TV producers. What do you think, John?
Well, yeah, if we proceed along the same path, but this stuff is sort of eating itself alive now. So I think we're going so far up our own fundament, they're going to come out the other end now. So hopefully all this is going to just die the death of 1,000 cuts, because effectively nothing will become permissible if we carry on this way. Hey, get real. This is the real world. People in wheelchairs can be good, they can be bad, they can be nice, they can be wicked, they can be all these things. It doesn't matter. But nonetheless, even this production team isn't averse to a bit of body horror themselves. I cite you the Robot Revolution, where we had a straight white male dangled legless and attached to a machine. But that was fine because he was a straight white male, and we could show him that in this current iteration of Doctor Who. But nonetheless, that was effectively body horror. We were showing this man had been produced, and his body was a shadow of his former self, and held together by bits of string and wire and all sorts. So they do it, but then again, it's the same way that they don't have weapons, but the Doctor just fired a big dirty great weapon at Omega in the last episode of the last season. So as I say, they've gone so far they'll end up coming out the other side. Doctor Who will always do, or should continue to revert back to what it does best, which is be frightening, but in a safe environment for all sorts, whether that's children or whether that's adults as well, because Doctor Who can terrify some adults too, provided it's still in a safe environment of their living room as they tuck into their fish fingers. All's well.
And you know what? It's a good way of showing the world is hard. I grew up in the 90s in the United States, and we had some pretty bad things happen in the 90s that we watched live on TV. And so I saw things probably as a child that in this generation they'd be shocked to see. And it kind of gives you an idea of understanding that the world is violent, the world is cruel, the world is hard.
Yeah, and remember, because if RTD, and I know I'm comparing it to Ark in Space, really, once you get off Earth, there's an element of it's surreal for the kid anyway. You can still have the thrills and the chills that there's this monster, this thing's chasing you or whatever, but you're not in Earth with a staircase and a road round the corner. Obviously, when we talk about Spearhead from Space and Auton Shop Dummies and that's a slightly different thing. But RTD could have made it easier by just getting us off the planet Earth and just giving us the thrills in space, like in Nerva Beacon. Now, Megan makes a good point here. With the advent of realistic graphic images on so many computer games, kids these days have become desensitized to things that would have shocked adults 20 or more years ago. I would have thought logically then, Megan, is we shouldn't pull back from this then. We should be kind of...
as a kid live on TV that would shock people today. I mean... I watched Riots live. I watched Aftermath of Terrorist Attacks live. I saw things that today would not be shown on TV.
Oh, I saw stuff on the news. It's amazing. I saw in the 80s on the news.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why we have on the United States TV, we have delays on news things, because there's something that happened in LA where we all saw a man himself live on TV.
Yeah.
That's the irony, Brendan, of the sort of mollycoddling, the bubble wrapping, if you like, of
in the 90s, we were mollycoddles. I saw the original Denny beating live as a child.
As I was saying, the mollycoddling, the bubble wrapping of children nowadays, or young people, by television executives, when at the same point they can have these in their hands and the whole world is present in all its horrific glory is there at the touch of a fingertip for them. Yet at the same time, some people in TV think they need protected from those horrors as well. Now, somewhere in the middle lies the basic truth, if you like, of this matter is what Doctor Who should do, just be true to itself. It made it last all those years before, with some degree of criticism, yes, but nonetheless, just carry on what it does best. And if it goes over the score, it'll get its wrist slapped and it'll sort itself out.
So,
I'm just wondering whether we could combine news stories and a new villain for Doctor Who and have Bob fill in.
now we are going to age the stream. I mean, they'll all be going, "Who's he?"
But Shuggy's right. I mean, to be honest with you, Brendan, on the one hand, the BBC and RTD are telling us that they can't show body horror in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And then live streaming last weekend, we've got a pop artist basically shouting for another Holocaust.
Yep. I know. It's called hypocritical double standards in broadcasters. I know, it's unbelievable.
We'll love each other.
Yeah, Jess, but Brendan, the art is in the storytelling, decent quality, tense, emotively charged writing, not the lame hack writing they're produced. Yes. Now, as you know, we had 3 cliffhangers. I am one of those. I'm desperate for cliffhangers back. I mean, proper cliffhangers. We had 3. So, Michelle, I'll start with you. Part 1, part 2, or part 3? Which one was your key one? Which one was your twee one?
Part 1 is my favorite because the first whole part was like a little play because you only had the 3 characters trying to figure out where they're at. It felt very intimate, very scary. So that was my first one. I think that was twee. 2 or 3. Yeah. But my favorite one was part 1.
Okay. Hugh, your thoughts on this one? Because obviously, as a Doctor Who fan, you know what gets you going and you know what doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think part 1, because of what Michelle said, that run in, and the whole thing is, in part 1, you're not really sure what the threat is. There is no real indication of what's going on. It's all about finding out for half of it, the threat is the candelabra that's come down from the roof is going to kill them. Another part of it is what's going to happen to Sarah, but that's not the actual threat. And again, this is interesting, I think, whenever we go through a lot of these reviews, that there are a lot of bits which you could say could well be a scary finish, but you get them throughout the episode. So the reveal of Sarah in the little cubicle thing could be, but it's not, because there's a story part of it, and that's again partly to do with what Robert Holmes is doing, which is building things up and doing a bit of misdirection and then dropping it in. I don't think any of them are bad. I think they're all reasonable, but I think the first one is where you actually get a proper twist in the story, and that's what's good.
Well, I thought, John, for me, it was part 1 because the classic thing for everyone to remember is we had a week to think about this, and you've got this insect. I don't think you knew at the time whether it was dead or not. It just came out the closet, one of the first outings. And bless him, that poor Rurin. I mean, we all know you shouldn't be dragged out the closet, and that poor Rurin was. But anyway, I think that's mine, John, because I think of the shock value.
Did he ask consent to be pulled out of the closet?
Well, it's just that, I know as a kid, normally that's where the Hoover or the ironing board is. And when he opened that door, and whoa, and then I've got a week at school, John. What about you?
Yeah, it reminded me a bit of my own history. I sort of fell out of the closet rather than being out of it. That's a story for another day. Have to be boring, have to agree with everybody. It's the classic Doctor Who. It's the one cliffhanger, the big reveal of the creature as it tumbles out. We're not in hindsight, we can look back now, we know it's dead and it falls on top of Harry, but at the time we didn't, so it was a great cliffhanger. But the end to episode 3 also is a great cliffhanger, but what lets it down obviously is we're dealing with effects of the time. Here is the real body horror of this, because this is Noah being eaten from the inside out. What sort of a painful, the man's dying and then dies, but what a horrible way to die. And it's fair enough, it's done with a BBC sort of mix effect, between the costume that Kenton Moore's wearing and the actual Wern costume itself. And that detracts basically from what the cliffhanger is. Look what's happened to this man who was walking, talking, breathing after being awakened from a sleep just a few short hours ago. And now he's been eaten alive. That's terrifying.
Plus, it's compounded in your head, John, because the dialogue over the previous episodes have built that up. Because I think in episode 1 we had the eating, the larvae, the genus. You got all this language as a kid, and you're going, "Oh God, what?" I love the fact that you had to do slowly that 2 and 2.
Yeah, and you know what? In terms of the acting of this, Tom Baker's giving the science of this. Well, Elizabeth Sladen's doing her part. She's giving her horrified reaction to what is just a piece of nature, that the eggs and the larvae getting buried in the host, so that there's a ready-made food supply for when the babies are born. It's horrific, but it's nature. But she does her job for us, and it's a great acting role. So that when it's shown to us at the end of episode 3 in all its glory, it's the effect, if you like, that lets it down. But that's probably just as well as Doctor Who may well have got into a whole lot more trouble had they shown something a bit more horrific at that point.
Of course, we've got Tom Baker in action. We've got Sarah doing a lot. I mean, I thought it was a really well written story. This is where we can bounce around a little bit now before I do one of my other segments, because, you know, where were your highlights? I mean, if I just, as I'm talking here and flicking through, for me, it's in that solar stack, because it's darker. Yes, admittedly, in part 4, the Nerva beacon, because the power's going, the lighting gets more atmospheric, and you get that horrible. It's a really great effect of that Riran sound effect scuttling around, and especially when Sarah's going through that chute, and she has to go past the solar stack. To me, the answer to this story is the solar stack, creeping around where that green blob is, creeping around, not wanting to get grabbed by a Riran. So to me, it was just that simple set, dark, with the Dudley Simpson incidental music. To me, that is just raw Doctor Who. Absolutely love it. Michelle, this was your first time. So where were the highlights for you?
Just that it was an intelligent story. I mean, there was, and the writer was intelligent. There's amazing dialogue. This is just something that, again, we were missing in the last era. And as somebody in the chat was saying, "Oh, you know, we can't, you know, complain on the error without." We're not complaining on what the crew did. The crew did an amazing job, but what they were handed was awful.
What do you think, Hugh, about highlights of this one?
I know the scene where Tom Baker berates Elizabeth Sladen in order to get her to finish off pulling the thing through. Whenever Liz Sladen volunteers to take everything through, it's the use of the language to try and distance things. So when Vera comes alive and starts going, "You're primitives because of the way you talk," the whole thing with Robert Holmes is, sometimes he almost stuffs too much in, but it's always a delight to watch because there's always a new idea every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Mabley up in my region, doesn't the doctor body shame Sarah Jane when she gets her backside stuck in a pipe? Do you know that body shaming would have so helped Omega get out of that blooming drain pipe in
farce.
So, I mean, there's labels for it all now, aren't there, John? You know, body shaming this. That's why I mentioned the body horror, because I'm thinking I can't see any TV production like Doctor Who daring to go back to where we all think it should. Because of all those things. And I liked, as Hugh said, I liked that interplay. It seemed realistic to me.
Mm-hmm. And you have to remember, again, this is only their second outing in terms of the chronology. These two are doing it straight away. They've got that chemistry straight away, and it's excellent. But in terms of talking about my favourite moments, I'm going to surprise you with one of my favourite moments from this. And it's when Sarah is... there's two moments. She lies on the couch as she's getting cryogenically frozen, and then later on when they're waking up the humans, and that voiceover artist. There's an old actress called Gladys Spencer, I think, who plays the Earth President, and she gives a performance and reads that speech out, and it gives this feeling, a real epic quality, I feel, that mankind has gone, humankind has gone, and into the hands of these few survivors, replacing the hopes and dreams and aspirations of the entire human race. And I think the way that's written and the way that's performed, both on an individual basis for Sarah and then for all of them in the cryogenic chamber, is beautiful. It really gives a certain stamp of epicness to this story. Great writing, great voice acting.
I agree with you. I actually agree with you that there was something about it, wasn't it? And it wasn't like the tick box. Oh, they're saying they're female in the future. Oh, forget that crud. The point was, whoever she was as an actress, her voice, the way she did it, it had a great quality. And you've wrapped it up there.
And she was an old actress. She was born in 1890, whatever. Because I went and looked her up. But the point was, it wasn't the fact so much that she was female, though. The fact that her voice had age and gravitas and wisdom to it. It really gave a real sense of a very, if you like, wise human president wishing the next generation, the saved generation, every success. Lovely.
Yeah, and there were loads of. I mean, it was mentioned earlier in the thread and by one of our panelists about the language, because, right, I have my issues about nowadays how fast these scripts must be written, but this is a script started with John Lucarotti, then they've had to mess on with it and change it and all the rest of it, and make it into a Doctor Who shape. But on top of that, Robert Holmes has got this. He's gone for a layer of language for the world building. So you're making it less accessible in a way. But that's what I liked as a kid. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in episode 1 and episode 2 with the scientific talk about the larvae, the genus, and all the rest of it. That was a way above my 6-year-old state. Bit like I mentioned in Genesis of the Daleks. I loved that. You sat with your mum and dad and you're going, this is grown up. And you're trying your best to understand, but you know there'll be a creepy crawly around the corner, so you're waiting. So that all works, but it makes kind of adult sense. You're going, oh, wow, this is clever. And that sort of thing. Pair bonding. I love that now, I was pair bonded with Nura, We could have a dating website now. But
and that whole discussion of it's a joke and them dealing with just the difference in language. There is enormous amounts put in there by Robert Holmes.
Yeah.
But you could tell that she loved him too. Yeah, they're pair bonded, but she loved him. I mean, there was.
Yeah.
Yes, because his real name was only mentioned once. Was it Lazar?
Lazar.
Right,
Lazarus, obviously.
And also, but she loved him and gave her pain that she lost her mate within minutes of waking up again.
Yeah. Greg Smith here. Ark is the story where the beloved Baker Doctor is fully formed. Let's repeat. Story 2. He's got the character down and hits the ground running in this adventure. I saw in some parts of on my Facebook page, some were saying that the robot story, they almost turned off Doctor Who. A bit of the looning around of Tom Baker's Doctor then after regeneration, but this got them back. It was this one that said, I mean, I was back after part 2 of Robot because he was very settled very quickly, I thought. In this one, he is just so different to John Pertwee, just so otherworldly, so on top of his game. The way he delivers a line, God, he's posh. I mean, whoa.
Isn't that interesting about the path not taken? That perhaps it was right, therefore, for Barry Letts and Terence Dicks to hand over this new generation to Tom Baker and Liz Sladen to Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes, because while there's nothing strictly wrong with Robot, I enjoy Robot and I enjoy Tom's performance in it. It's very much a carbon copy or 2.0 of the Pertwee era, whereas this is very much the new team taking place and Tom being able to put his stamp on what he believes to be an alien Doctor, an alien surrounded by his favourite species, human beings. So it is interesting to look at, had Barry Letts continued, and it's interesting to see that when he does direct a story later on in the Android Invasion, we get a sense more of the old unit family again there. had he continued, we may not have got the classic Tom that we get in these seasons. So it was the right move for them to move on and allow Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes to put their stamp on it.
And at the same time, well, talking about that and saying that it moves it forward, also one of the reasons it works is because it takes it back and it's a base under siege thing. So you get the echoes of Troughton as well. So it's a very clever move. It's a new start, but it also references back a lot.
Yeah, that's why it's almost impossible to imagine John Pertwee in this story. I don't know why. I can imagine Troughton. You're right, Hugh. I can imagine Troughton in this story, but I can't imagine Pertwee, who was only the Doctor 4 episodes ago.
Yeah, and Stephen O'Neill said one of his favourite bits is the Madame Nostradamus, a witty little knitter. I don't know. It's just a nice little line. But again, he sells it. He doesn't cheapen it or anything. It's just a little line. It's all. I have to say, I just think it's well written. But of course, it's Robert Holmes. No surprise.
Yeah.
There.
Take another example of that. The whole thing of at the start, whenever Harry's shoes get shot to bits, is to set up a line 3 episodes long where Rogan said, "Don't want to set that in your shoes," and he said, "How much worse would it be for me?" Because I don't have any shoes, which he doesn't obviously say that bit, but that's the setup of that. That's 3 episodes to get a joke in.
Rather than having 2 Rani to do the 2 Ronnies joke, hello. I'm going to spoil it now, everybody. You know the game here. We've just been getting very nostalgic and warm and warm-hearted about Ark in Space, but you know that's not it. It works completely on our review. And so I don't know. I think I want to cheer John up with a bit of jiving. He likes a bit of jiving. So yes, let's go for a bit of intimacy watch, shall we? I keep dreading coming back, thinking he'll have stripped off by the time we get back. But
from the waist down.
So, intimacy watch. You know the score. Me being sarcastic as ever. They had an intimacy coordinator for season 2, probably because Ncuti Gatwa had to get into bed with Verada Sethu, and they didn't know what to do. So basically, intimacy coordinator, and of course, it gives me an excuse to look at our great classic stories in a different way. I have to say, I've heard in many interviews, Tom Baker and Liz Sladen, both fans of Charlie Chaplin and some of those old movies, and they love the slapstick and the physical quality of comedy and all the rest of it. This story is so physical for both of them. I don't know how many times he has to pick her up, put her down, be careful in how he does it. It's quite a physical story, this one, actually. I mean, for example, I'll carry on. I've just dumbstruck you again. So
no, I'm just giving others a chance to bang their guns together.
It is. I mean, I do appreciate. He has to pick her up, and she's wearing her short skirt in the beginning part of it, so you have to make sure you're not flashing anything.
Well, as has been pointed out in the chat, Harry or Ian Marter makes sure she doesn't, very carefully making sure that the dress gets pulled down when it gets put on the table.
Yes.
Actually, Ian Marter agreed to do that for Elizabeth. She was a bit concerned about the length of her skirt in those scenes, and she actually said to him she was worried that her knickers might show. So he made sure, the gentleman, that wouldn't be the case. So nowadays there would have to be at least a 6-team meeting for that event to take place, no doubt.
It's classic, isn't it? I mean, they're working together. You know, there's been a discussion, and yes, when you see both of them lift her, his job with that hand is just to make sure that is just because you're not going to do loads of takes either. This is the point, and she knows that. So yes, protect her
But what
modesty.
respect he has for her, that she's concerned, he's going to make sure that she is comfortable.
Yeah. So everybody spotted the hand, but I'm sure she
And
was.
the interesting thing about that is that it actually plays well as the character.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's not just the actor doing that because one actor's asked the other actor to do it. It actually plays quite well into Harry's character.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, chivalrous, wasn't he? She was always telling him off all that, being a bit old-fashioned, but yeah, that was him, and it helped for a lot of interplay. With this intimacy watch, well, I hope then I bet in rehearsals they had a scream with doing this. This is like the play school actors when they basically have just one block and they have to do, become an elephant and do this. And, actors, they are Shakespearean actors. Play school and Doctor Who happen to do amazing things. But yes, get under that desk and crawl around on the floor and hide from, the candelabra, so to speak. Yes, I suppose you might have to get that heavily staged now because, you don't know what's going to go on. But anyway, there you go on that one. But this is what I wanted to really see. It was a clever device to have that transmat so you could go to another part of Nerva Beacon. Clever because that's the way you can get around certain things. The trouble is that all this lifting and putting them down. Tom Baker. Now, I know he's had many roles. We all talk about him being, working on a brickyard and all the rest of it. But God, he's physical. And he is so careful. I'll just show you this shot in the last one before we move on. But you can see here, you've got to be so careful how you do this, especially in those days. This one, I still can't really watch because the way this is a dangerous shot, I think. The way she has to be so careful with her back. It is high up. I don't know. Does it bother? When I say bother you, I'm always thinking, oh my God, her back. It always bothers me.
No, it doesn't bother me.
No.
I've been in a few positions over the years. I've come out of it all right.
We don't want to know, John. We don't want to know.
It's just it's so high up. You know what they're like nowadays with health and safety and everything, and you think, God, yeah, you're relying on. Remember, they're Russian takes. You know what it's like in those days. Lights off at 10. It's quite a complex physical maneuver that they're having to do at speed, and yeah.
But remember as well, Brendan, in those days, one thing they did have was rehearsal, and a lot of this would have been blocked, rehearsed, both at Acton and in the afternoon before they came to record in the evening. So the actors and the director and everybody else would have been very well aware of what worked, what didn't work, what they felt comfortable with, what they didn't feel comfortable with. Whereas nowadays, it's a sort of one and done. They turn up and they do it in front of the cameras. So this would have been well worked out, I presume, in rehearsals, just so Elizabeth Slane would have actually understood if she was comfortable in doing this. And I feel absolutely certain that if she wasn't, it would have been changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her back is the Ark in Space, is Michael Nemo. Well done. Jamie Tron. When Tom Baker lifted up and carried Morbius, that was impressive. He's a physical doctor in that way.
He's a very strong one too. You think about all those first few seasons, he was throwing an awful lot of people over his shoulder. He's very strong.
Now, Jess is reminding me, intimacy coordinators are a relatively new but necessary element in the film and TV industry, which largely came about in 2018 due to the Me Too movement. I quite rightly, I've discussed this with Rachel, and yeah, quite rightly, adds to a bit of joking though. Michael Nemo, thank you very much. Her back in the Ark in Space, which I said, but thank you for that. So I need to reward you, of course I do. We've mentioned it a few times, so let me just do this. Oh, I like that sinister stuff. Bit of, well, yeah.
You got too much time on your hands. Back to work.
Whoa. Right. So, that was our little mini intimacy watch, just to be cheeky. Now I've got another little item, and this is to really this is Ark in Space if it was done now, and you know, scary monsters time. So let me just do my little segment.
This is how we see Davros now.
Oh, thank you very much for that. How you saw it now. I've got just two items on this one. It gives us an excuse to talk about Ark in Space in a slightly different way, of course. But where I wanted to go with this one is we had the sequence when the Doctor goes, look at this, Harry, it's so exciting. This archive of the whole of human history. And basically the topics he lists sounds as though they were trivial pursuits categories like literature, art and music, you know, it's all like that. But I can't help myself. If RTD got his mitts on Ark in Space now, you know that we'd be, oh my God, we'd be going hellish about the Cataclysm, Greta Thunberg lines would be thrown in there, the cataclysm that was threatening the Earth. Can you imagine, John, what the message would be now with the same Ark in Space plot?
Yeah, I somewhat dread what would be coming out of those little drawers that Tom's pulling out there. I really dread to think. But this is it. But this is wrong with the Ark in Space, or what's wrong with current Doctor Who as opposed to the Ark in Space. There will be a little latent message in there about, you know, preserving what's good about humanity and restarting and rebuilding and all this sort of stuff. But that would be swamped nowadays with a whole lot of political messaging rather than, if you like, moral stuff or you know, a nod to what's good and what's bad, whatever. I don't know. But nonetheless, yeah, there's a place for messaging if you want to find it. Let it be latent, let it be somewhere in the text. But nowadays it's a bit sledgehammer, so it would detract from the overall enjoyment of the story, no doubt, because... And the question is, whose message is it? It's not opinion. It's not a fact they're giving us. It's very much opinion when it comes to Russell Davies, is it not? Do you think Shooty's tights and skirts would be in those little drawers, perhaps? Or his drawers?
Yeah, well,
in those drawers?
He could, yeah. I mean, there's so much to look for. Another costume, many costumes. I mean, you got changed every 5 minutes. Yeah, I mean, this is the issue, Hugh. I mean, I'm doing this item to prove a point in many ways to a lot of people who watch and say, "Oh, 70s Doctor Who was so political," and I'm thinking, hold on a minute. In Ark in Space, when we got this very moment, the Doctor actually says, "I wonder what happened." He doesn't say, "I bet you I know what happened." You know, you ruined your Earth. You wrecked Earth. It's all your fault. You humans abandoned. No, you ask the question, you don't get the answer, Hugh.
Yeah, can I just say, I love that piece of design of the little drawers. It's really quite clever. It's one of those. I mean, it's not used a lot, and it's just a nice little thing. Obviously, doesn't really do anything with computers, but there we are. Yeah, I think the whole point about this is, I think, as I've said before, the problem now is that we live in a world where nuance has been removed from the dictionary, and you look at something like this where the characters, in terms of those that are being revivified, aren't necessarily amazingly good people, and there are difficulties and sort of like there are questions about how things are treated. You know, sort of like Rogan's whole complaining part of it and stuff. It's not a perfect society, nor is it meant to be. Whereas now you either have perfect people or totally imperfect people, and that's the problem. There is no nuance to the message. The message should be about letting you think about it, and should be about saying there is stuff that is important, and we should all think about that and come to a conclusion. Nowadays, we're told what the conclusion is.
Yeah, this is the problem, Michelle. And you know, I'm this weekend I'll be meeting the biographer of Malcolm Hulke. You know, Michael Herbert, who's been on many a
Right.
time with us, and it's his birthday. And so I send him good wishes, everyone. But we all know that while people waffle on about politics in Doctor Who in the 70s, they're missing the point. It was open ended. Silurians is one example where, you know, you thought, oh, hold on a minute here. Absolutism is the death to drama, to lots of things. But Michelle, it was open ended in Ark in Space. They didn't say, "Oh, Greta Thunberg was right. Net zero, you should have done more." They just don't go there. What? They don't mention the Wombles. They don't do anything. They just say, "I wonder what happened."
Exactly. And it gives you this idea that you don't know what happened. And I love that. I love that idea.
And the other thing is mystery. Having to make fill the gaps yourself is good drama. That's what you're meant to do. Although I'm not going to say that out loud again, because RTD will say, therefore I won't explain anything, and I'll just get on with umpteen plots. Yeah, I know. This one, final one on the message, is a slightly different point. We had we've referenced it, the genetic pool. And to be quite honest, the way the script is going here, I know that if RTD had his mitts on this, we'd have gone the opposite version and said diversity is strength. We'd have gone that other way, because on this one, I love that phrase, 7% stretch in the genetic pool is allowed. A 7% stretch. And Colony 9, that was it, with the regressives. Oh God, I can just see this message now. I'm so glad it's preserved, John. I'm so glad it's locked down and nobody can tamper with it.
Well, yeah, because unfortunately, Doctor Who is gone. You know, Doctor Who, sort of Doctor Who that this was, or this represented, has gone. But it's preserved, you're quite right. It's there for us to go back to and remember happier times before Doctor Who became a vehicle delivery service for the message that you're talking about. But that's the point about Russell Davies has made it quite clear. He's not interested in writing entertainment anymore or entertaining drama. It's about getting a message across. I suggest he goes and writes a column in a newspaper. That's a more effective way of delivering that if he can't deliver deliver it with nuance in Doctor Who or any other drama.
Yeah, Hugh, respect your audience. Let them make their own mind up. I mean, there's a line in it. It's a simple line. It just says, all creeds, all differences forgotten. That's sci-fi for you. There's the hope. You don't have to ram the message down. It sounds good. I think we'd all agree to that. That's it.
Yeah, and obviously there's the stuff in Star Trek as well around the same time as Doctor Who's doing it. Again, it's about, we've talked about this before, where you have a set of writers who don't all agree with one another, but who have respect for one another. Whereas what you have with Russell is Russell either chooses the writer because they agree with him, or makes the writer agree with him by rewrite.
It's interesting because Terence Dicks and Barry Letts were not opposite ends, but didn't agree with each other politically. They make that quite clear in interviews, but they rubbed along together famously and were able to produce some startling Doctor Who. Philip Hinchcliffe acted as a pullbacks in some of the wilder excesses of Robert Holmes in terms not so much of his political writing, but in terms of the writing of horror and violence and some of the body horror stuff that he did do. But at the moment, if you like, the thing that's wrong with Doctor Who is that it's run by one person. And particularly in this iteration, where it's one person, seems to transcend every aspect of the show. And that's not good, not only for Doctor, it's not good for any show, but it's particularly not good for Doctor Who in its current state.
Well, it's an echo chamber now, because if you can't associate with people of other political beliefs or religions or whatever, because they're evil. So you have to associate yourself with people who think exactly like you. And if you deviate one little bit, you're not kicked out of the club.
Stephen O'Neill, a baby ruining space, heaven forbid. We'd have had babies now, wouldn't we? That's what we'd have had now. We'd have had babies on Nerva Beacon. We'd have just Greg Smith, as much as people talk about political messages in Who, they also showed the flip side where technocrats who felt they needed to save humanity were the baddies. Yeah. I thought it was just nice and subtle in this one. I listened to, Wendy Williams's character, Vira, and she's so frosty knickers, isn't she? And so kind of up herself that you kind of, as a kid, don't quite like her till later on when at the end she smiles. When
She does, but that's a great performance, Brent, because she does defrost as it goes on. At the same time, she displays, as we talked about, Michelle mentioned earlier, her love, if you like, for Noah. They've been pair bondage. She lets that come across without over egging it. Nowadays, there'd be tears flying everywhere, but she does it in a very subtle, nuanced. There's that word again. Performance, and at the end, as the Doctor throws us some jelly babies, she smiles. So we see how she's come through this. She has an arc with a C in the Ark in Space as well, and that's a wonderful, nuanced, proper acting performance. It doesn't need the tissues out every 5 minutes.
And I think this is where RTD got it wrong, because when you watch Ark in Space, we are reviewing Ark in Space. It's just to make these little needle points that sometimes have to be done because the BBC don't get it. They've paid a man to do an absolute hatchet job on Doctor Who. And when you watch Ark in Space, that he would attest to being one of the best Doctor Who's, it's quite simple that you look at, he would say that moment at the end, John, when she smiles and the jelly babies are thrown, I bet you, and I disagree with him, but he would say that Doctor Who's always been camp. It's always had camp moments. No, it's just a lovely little moment, that's all.
Yeah. And this is what they're doing to justify every single move they make in Doctor Who. Doctor Who's always been camp. It's always been gay friendly. Apparently, it's always been for queer people, whatever the hell queer people are. That's the last thing that Doctor Who magazine told me before I binned it. So, the point is this. Doctor Who is about quality writing, quality direction, quality performances in the main. And Wendy Williams does that without having to have Murray Gold banging out an orchestra behind her or a supply of tissues as she turns on the waterworks. Good for Wendy.
Too true. We were still in this era, and this is my segment when I'll ask them about this, because it's Ark in Space. There's plenty to say. Here we go. And of course, for me, never mind the cliffhangers, it's the fear factor. So I'll go straight to you, Michelle. First time you've seen this. Can you imagine where the thrills and spills would be? Can you imagine where you'd be actually really scared? Or does it not do that?
It is scary watching the Noah turn into this creature. I mean, that is horrifying. That idea that he is being, eaten from within by this creature within minutes of waking up from a cryogenic sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, Hugh. I mean,
think about that day at work. I mean,
this is Doctor Who doing. I mean, you've got all that amount of bubble wrap, and of course, everybody is so harsh about the creature from the pit. I really don't get it. There you go. That
another excuse. You just can't wait to get that bit on.
Yeah, well, that green blob, at least it didn't have a bit of hair. This one, he had Mr. Tufty. By the solar stack, he had a bit of hair left. I mean, a wig or a baseball cap, maybe. But he has tufts of hair, which makes it gross, actually.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it does. But again, that's fine. And I think that in some senses that works in the way of bathos and allows a kid to watch that and go, that's gross rather than scary. I mean, I think though, I mean, one of, if you're wanting a bit of scary, which I think is really clever, is the bit where Noah says, "I am June," and that's the sort of like the possession part of it, and that's a really nice, clever piece of throwing it in and moving the plot along and giving information to the people without having to tell them the information in a big block of, I'm about to give you lots of information. It's a brilliant line.
Yes. There's only one bit, I think it's in part 4 at the beginning, when the Rurans say, right, we've got to tell you our speech now. We've got to tell you what's going on. And there was a little bit there, which is, I suppose, my only little thing. If I was a script editor, I'd wonder if is there a way we can layer it a bit more. But that's it, really. I mean, John, you know where you were when you were a kid watching these things. I mean, to me, I'm that kind of Doctor Who fan where just seeing a little slug on the floor, they see it in the corner of the eye when the door opens and zoom, and it goes down the vent. It's stuff like that that gets me. The mystery of what was that, and then later on you see a slug trail and it goes to one of the the casements, and you're going, oh. It's stuff like that for me. What was it for you that got you thrilled?
Yeah, I get that. I understand that. But my two things. The first thing is that when it goes silent, you get the idea of the silence of space. When you got those shots of how lonely the Ark looks, I find that quite frightening. That these people are out there alone, and there's an invader, and I find all those silent moments to be quite frightening, because space is frightening. Space is spooky. It's vast and it's silent. It's not empty, but it's vast and it's silent. And I did that. I used to, as a youngster, I used to be terrified of long hotel corridors. I'll tell you why one day, but that's. But nonetheless, long, silent spaces like that, long empty spaces, I find quite frightening. So that works for me. But in terms of a piece of dialogue, there's one dialogue uttered by the Noah worm later on. I think it's in episode 4, when he says he gives them the opportunity to leave the Ark and says, "Leave the sleepers for us." Now, that's one line, and I find that terrifying, because basically he said, we're going to eat them. We're going to hatch into it and do what we have to. And you imagine being in that position as another human being and thinking, okay, I've got safe passage here. But the sheer horror of what you're leaving your companions and colleagues for is a horrible concept. Horrible.
I agree. I mean, moments like this on the screen now. However, I will say fundamentally, with a little bit of Dudley Simpson music, because it really does take me back to the 70s and being thrilled. Genesis of the Daleks music, that sort of thing, some great stuff. But it's the dialogue. The dialogue delivered well. You've just mentioned a bit of it, John. But, those moments when Sarah and Tom Baker are talking and basically about they're going to get digested. And he has a phrase, I wish I remembered it. He was talking about the whole gestation and everything process. And your brain is on fire going, oh my God. My first horror is actually what's in your head, isn't it? Fundamentally.
But that's the point, That's when Doctor Who's good. So this creature crawling along the floor there, you said you were 6 at the time. I can understand why you'd find that creepy. And those children, young adults at that point, getting that line about leave the sleepers for us, that's a horrifying concept for them. So Robert Holmes is doing it in so many different levels for different members of the audience. He's really pulling all the stops here for that. And that's what makes Doctor Who. It's not a one size fits all. You're twiddling all the knobs and doing it properly. You can pull in a variety of different fear factors for different levels of the audience at all sorts of ages. And Robert Holmes is the master at doing that. That one line, even now, listening to it today, 40, whatever it is, years later, 50 years later, still sends a shiver up my spine.
Oh, definitely.
I'll tell you an interesting one which give me a shiver, and it's not, I don't think it's meant to, but whenever Noah is confronting the Doctor before he is possessed and says, the Earth is ours, I think it's partly that whole thing that Noah, whenever he becomes a Wirren, is still a bit Noah. And it's the goodness in him that allows him to deal with the Wirren, although it's maybe a bit harsh. But it's also, there is a drive in Noah that has led him to be the leader and has led him to be fairly dictatorial. And there's something there which I think is Holmes saying that he's not just a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is something. I'm watching it again. It was the sound of the Wirren, like I said, that squeaking effect. Seeing that slug in that shot, and later on, I can't remember which character it was, but it chased across that room and grabbed one of the tech lads, wasn't it?
Lycett is the character.
He was paralyzed. That sort of thing is just what gets me in Doctor Who. When you get a quick death, you needed to hide behind a door. all that stuff. Remember when Sarah Jane was grabbed by a Riven in the vent? You know, that kind of, whoa, we're surrounded, as you said, base under siege.
If you think about it, these three of those poor guys who have been sleeping in cryogenic stasis for how many hundreds and hundreds of years, within minutes, three of them have been either taken over or murdered. So it's fairly typical Robert Holmes territory. You know, you just go through all that and survive the Holocaust of the solar flares, and then only to have yourself either shot by your leader or consumed by a worm isn't nice at all. Unfortunate.
Now, Jess is a writer. I do enjoy writing scenarios like these where you are somewhere unknown, unpredictable, and no sense of direction because where you could be going or what you could be doing. The Doctor lands. It's supposed to be a quick little show off in the TARDIS, isn't it? And of course, I counted when I was getting my screenshots. I think 2 minutes into part one, we've got the candelabra threatening them. Sarah's already been, nearly asphyxiated. I mean, my God, we're not messing around. We're not doing hi, honey, and all the rest of it. We are getting right into it. Jeopardy followed by jeopardy. And one of the most amazing things from this good writer is what was part one's cliffhanger, and yet we'd had an amazing possibility just before it when they said Sarah Jane Smith might have to stay frozen for 3,000 years before the revive. And you think, oh my God, we've lost Sarah. Not even a cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's Robert Holmes, isn't it? It's Robert Holmes. Interestingly, in one of the behind the sofa features on the box sets, Louise Jameson refers to Robert Holmes in telling her colleagues on the couch, Robert Holmes, he's the Russell T Davies of the classic era. He should hope.
Oh God, Louise, Louise who can do no wrong, but maybe she got that. Now the Riven. Now here we go. Obviously we're talking about a classic story. Now, look, I've got my Riven here. Look at this.
What is that? What is that?
The Riven.
Did you make that yourself?
No. There's a Who shop in Stockton.
That looks like something one of my dogs did earlier.
Yeah, he's got the mandibles and all the rest of it. If you look at that. So there you go, my Ark In Space Riven. There he is.
You gotta dissect him later.
So Lorraine, just saw it in the shop. I was shopping with Paul. You know Paul, our panelist. And he said, there's this Who shop in Stockton on Tees. And when I was in there, they had all these models, and I thought, I want that Riven. Not cheap, but movable parts, as you'd expect.
Do you have nights out together?
Yeah, I mean, it's something you'd take to bed, isn't it, really?
I can see that happen. Yeah, I don't know where you'd put it, though.
Mind you, if you laid it on the bed a bit, unfortunately, and you didn't see the mandibles, you might actually start thinking you've done... It looks a bit unfortunate. Get him in a care home fast.
It must be pure magic living with you.
Well, Graham agrees. I'm liking that little Riven, Brenda. Hey, size isn't the issue. Shut up. So, the Riven, of course, they're all part of this. We've compared it to the Zarbi and all the rest of it, but the voices worked. I liked that kind of Vira. I don't know. It kind of worked. And there you go. They're good in the dark. You know, that you could... I mean, that's why I think I like the Solar Stack moment. There's a moment when the Fourth Doctor's in the Solar Stack and that Riven's there. And there's that moment, and you're thinking, how's he going to get past him? Just simple stuff. Mm-hmm. Little scuttle, blah, blah, blah. That's all I need. But what do you think? I mean, Robert Holmes didn't want to kill them off, did he? He wanted them flying into space.
Robbie Bennett changed the mind about having them blown up.
Yeah, you could. I mean, whether that's because you could maybe bring them back or just to keep it open-ended. But the BBC were filling their pants, of course, saying, no, the little kiddies will be scared to death if we kept them alive, so we must kill them. I mean, would you like the Riven back at any point, or is it one of those one-trick ponies?
Well, yeah, let's have them back like we did, like Sutek and Omega.
Yeah.
That worked well, didn't it? Yeah. That worked.
One of the things that I've really noticed in terms of whenever we've been doing the reviews is it's made clear to me that what my favourites tend to be standalone stories of 4 episodes, and I like them because they're standalone. I don't reusing that stuff. Why reuse the Wirren? Because they're not iconic in the way they do. They're well done for what they are, and they contribute to that story. Bringing them back is just fan wank.
The other thing is, though, regarding this is, well, Big Finish do it all the time, don't they? This is the trouble. Big Finish want to fill every gap that I didn't even know was there. Let's bring the Ruin back. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's have Magnus Greel in Brisbane. Let's just do all these things. The Butcher of Brisbane, we get him there.
Magnus Greel in Brisbane, is that like a bit like one of these Joanna Lumley in the Caribbean type travelogue type things?
Yep.
Magnus Greel in Brisbane. Does he do a barbecue and walk along the beach?
And he's almost as bad tempered as Susan Calman actually is, according to Neil Cole. But it's a new series. Michael Palin can't do it now; he's older. But you've got our rehearsal shots with good old Noah there. But you had some great stuff. Oh, and look at there's Tom Baker having a nice relax with the Ruin. He must have thought, "What am I up to?" But yeah, I just think
you have to run back, but as soft furnishings for people's living rooms.
It's all possible. It is so true, though, isn't it, that why can't writers just keep going forward? Now, then we can't win here, can we? Because they'll bring the Daleks back. And, they said you have to have the Daleks in Doctor Who. So we allow them to revisit the programme, but we won't have the Ruin back. And we won't have others back. I know what you're saying, Hugh. I get it. I totally get it. And I actually think it is the law of diminishing returns in most cases, including the Daleks. Unless it's got a good story, don't bring them back because you think they're due.
Yeah, I'd say that if there was a good reason to bring them back, but I don't see how you can have a good reason to bring them back other than, look. I mean, the worst one I think that Russell's ever done for me, not so much because he ruined it, but because it was utterly pointless, was the Macra.
Yeah.
It's quite a good story, but it doesn't need the Macra to be there. And no one other than sad geeks like us is going, oh, look, it's the Macra.
Yeah, a CGI Macra as well. I mean, not quite the same as the original. But I just want to show everyone that shot. I go on my photo research website on Facebook. You can find them. And I'd not seen this shot. And I love to see how they just, change the angle slightly. Changes the world. Our great Nerva beacon as it really was. Michael Nemo, thank you very much. New Who would find a trans angle in this story, which could be interesting science fiction, but they don't write interesting stories anymore. So, of course, we have to leave it at that because, of course, it's too risky. But thank you. Here's some sense for your fans. Who's big? Hey, watch it, son. I can box you. Watch it. Oh, God, it was scary, isn't it? Oh. Is that a Carvanista? Flux, do me a favour. There we go. All this footage, good old Garbage makes them. Photographs by John Daly. We're at Utopia having fun. Yes.
I was about to say, whoever took that video knew what he was doing.
I bet you didn't realise there'd be a Carvanista in there. I bet you didn't see that. Where was that kid come from?
I thought it was Fuzzy Bear.
No. Stephen, the Ruin's lungs can turn carbon dioxide into oxygen. I know. The doctor mentions, I'm not even going to say that phrase, genus of wasps as capable of injecting the... That's the line, Stephen. Is that why you reminded me? Yes, you're a little kid of 6 going, what? But it does sound scary. You just even need to hear the word digest. And then Sarah to interrupt him going, and tell him off slightly. That's all you need. It's all you need. Now... Sorry, folks, we've been enjoying Ark In Space, but there's one segment I haven't mentioned yet, although the thread are already kind of jumping on it, which is...
Is it that bit? Is it that bit?
It's his bits, yeah. So, everybody, do you remember what's his name? What's his name? What was he called? I've forgotten what he was called now. Do you know what he was called? He was the doctor for a while. I was the doctor once. Anyway.
Titsy, whatever his name was.
Anyway,
With.
let's do the shooty doctor. Here we go. So let's have a look. Needs to give me a second. There we go. So here we go. What would the shooty doctor do? So here's my first one, folks. Yes, of course. What would he be doing? I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. I knew that, yes. What would the shooty doctor? It would be a whole episode. I think.
Well, it depends if Rogue is there.
Yeah. It's
If that's Rogue, we know exactly what he's doing.
Go on, John. You've got thoughts.
I was saying it's like taking Coast to Newcastle. I dare say he puts a room for one more on top.
Yes, I mean, honestly, he'd go rogue. This would be a whole episode under a table. Yeah, I know. Meanwhile, his companions being digested, being, you know.
Sarah's obviously next door suffocating away, and he's
Yeah.
probably just putting his tongue down Harry's throat, you know, looking
Yes.
for sustenance or some such
Yes,
thing.
I think this scene needs more rehearsal time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So yes, of course, I can't help it, folks. What would the shooty doctor do? He'd make a big thing of it.
This is the bit I thought about.
Sorry?
This is the bit I thought about when I thought about
What?
shooting.
Go on, John.
It's not Homo sapiens, is it? It's homosexuals.
Yeah, babes, honey. You're
No,
also
homosexuals. They're the sapiens.
and transsexuals, and you're all beautiful, and you're all amazing, and the human species brings joy to. Remember, joy, and you're all beautiful, and they're all amazing.
Give me the loving.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the loving. Yeah, God, it would have killed it. Absolutely killed it. He's impressed with the human species, but you can tell he's higher up in the hierarchy of the universe, as he says it at the same time, rather than going, "Oh God, you're so amazing, you lot, you're so beautiful," and it kind of limits it, just limits it. But I had to get that one in there because I think Shooty would have done it slightly different. Well, even if Shooty had the same bloody script, I just don't think it would have had that power or impact.
He wouldn't know. He just wouldn't know how to have delivered it. This is Tom's speech. Tom's speech, and we'll leave it at that. You know.
Yeah. This bit, Noah gets his gun out, and the shooty doctor would probably say, "Is that a gun or you play?" No. Or he'd probably say, "I'm loaded too." I don't know.
Get your hand off my weapon.
Yeah. Or he'd have disarmed him by saying, "Hi, babes." Like in the well. Because in the well, he talked to a soldier, didn't he? And he said, "Babes." And he, "Don't call me babes." "Oh, okay, hun." So instead, you've got Tom Baker's face going, "What are you doing?" Just, what are you doing? Very good. Very good. What about... I just like this speech in Ark In Space when he's about to put the electrodes in, maybe risk his life, you know, put himself in danger again, just so we can see what the Rirun are up to and to kind of see that memory, that race memory. And he goes, "You're probably one of my favourite species," with that massive grin. Great. Absolutely love that kind of thing. I can't imagine what Shooty would do. Do you know what? Tom Baker's Doctor was very good with the Kralls and Android Invasion, in Robots of Death. You know, when he's getting tortured and he has, and he's, you can see Tom Baker almost in proper agony. He really does the acting well. I didn't see that with Shooty's Doctor. When did we see Shooty in that kind of way?
Yeah, I think Shooty's doctor would have asked for these electrodes to match his outfit before agreeing to wear them. Or he might have considered on a change of outfit before being able to go ahead with this. There would have been some costume change, perhaps a higher heel, perhaps even a little accessorizing before he decided to do this.
And of course, there's two games.
I think that just realised. I think that's one of the bits where you would say this is a different Doctor from John Pertwee. That's done completely differently. That tone is very, very different. And that's what, it's one of the things, sometimes when we go through this and say, what should he doctor do? I quite often find it interesting because I'm thinking, why is that doctor unique? And Tom Baker's doctor, this is him being Tom.
And or Mrs. Stanhope, who in our thread, are you folks the anti? Oh dear. Let me just say, I'll introduce myself for anybody who's thick. Okay, I happen to be gay. I've been very gay for a very long gay time. So I know exactly what it's like to be gay. So get over yourself. Go to a playground. Go and play with yourself. But honestly, are you folks anti-gay? Get over yourself. Grow up. Are you as basic and as simple as that? We have been talking about Ark in Space. We've been talking about the complexity of plot. We've been talking about the beauty of nuance in a script. We've been talking about amazing acting. And we're having a joke about how cheap our program has got in 2025. Do you get what I'm saying? Did you get my nuance? Maybe I needed to be a bit clearer. I do apologise. Get over yourself and grow up. Find an education somewhere. Honestly, sometimes people need to just grow a few more extra brain cells. They don't know what they're saying. What, you're a gay crusader, are you? I'm gay. Shut your face. Nobody defends me. Back off. Now, regarding this one, what would Shooty do? Well, I think this is where we have a problem, which is with his companion. Remember, he said to Ruby Sunday, and he also says to Belinda that, without you, I couldn't have grown, and, all that kind of thing. Whereas we've already mentioned it, he kind of berates Sarah, teases, provokes, triggers Sarah to force her through that shoot because she said she was stuck. And she calls him a brute. She says it in a kind of, oh, you tricked me. And you can see that they have an understanding and it's okay. But I think the Shooty one would be just literal. I don't know what you think, John.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting over the fact that you're gay. Is that the fact that you've been telling me next year you're an English teacher?
I know, you just think, oh, for God's sake, grow up.
Sorry, I just look at this and I always think of Tom shouting, "Where's my Toblerone?"
Yes. I wonder what Liz Sladenhugh thought when she saw that and she said, hold on a minute, bloody hell. That's quite a...
Apparently she did get stuck when filming this. They filmed a sort of front-ways look so they could get her from the front onwards and a sideways version of this. And the front-ways on, which was triangular, poor Liz did get stuck and they had to, Tom and Ian, I think, had to extract her from it in a not too undignified manner. But bless her, she did it because she was a trooper.
Yeah, I could never have done that because I'm claustrophobic. So it's like, oh yeah, that is a claustrophobic scene. Ugh.
I agree. It's a classic scene for anything set on a space base. But the other thing about that is, I don't think Russell would write the Doctor being that horrible, but he does write the Doctor being that horrible subconsciously.
Yeah.
He just last season, the Doctor quite happily bemoaned the death of Belinda's Belinda's boyfriend. And he does a big RuPaul high kick over the sucking up of the sperm and egg belonging to whatever that poor child's name was.
Yeah.
So he's happy to make the Doctor cruel and it suits him.
Yeah, totally.
But I think he writes it sort of in a totally atonal fashion, whereas here you've got a perfect justification for it, and Tom can switch it on and switch it off.
He does it wonderfully because we know he doesn't mean it. It's like any good friend would say to another good friend, they are allowed to do this sort of stuff because ultimately it's not meant. And over the years, there's been plenty said to me for my benefit, which has riled me into doing something I might otherwise not wanted to do or stop from doing, but from a bit of vocal encouragement from a friend.
Sometimes I've had to do tough love with some of my staff members when they're acting up or, not performing well. I have to do a little bit of tough love on them.
Yeah.
Well,
Again,
as
it's
you,
the nuance thing, isn't it? This is nuanced a bit about
yeah.
the writing. Whereas,
Like the Doctor is deliberately cruel because they're making him cruel. He is being deliberately cruel here to make his friend be better. It's
There
just
was,
it's kind
yeah.
of a nuance.
So I've got Paul. Thank you very much, Paul. I don't know whether the person was a troll or not. They've actually said they were trying to explain something to somebody else in the thread. Can I just say, look, can we all be just above this kind of, let's rise to the debate rather than sink into, are you anti this, are you anti that? Because nobody's going to say in the thread, it's too basic. It's a Doctor Who thread. We're not getting into LGBTQ politics, and that's why I just won't tolerate it at all. So thanks, Paul, for that. Let's go to Niagara. Yep, bit of Niagara. So, yeah. Well, we've had the sets, we've had everything. Is there anything left to mention about this great story that we haven't yet? I'll give everybody a chance because, mind you, I forgot this.
we've not really mentioned Roddy Bennett, who directed a fair few Doctor Who stories in his time, is from that era of BBC drama where they sort of went around Secret Army and programs. I don't know if you did Poldark on Eden Line, all this sort of stuff. Really good stock BBC directors who could turn their hand to anything, and he really what he's good at doing here. He's got, for that first episode, you've got a mini play for today. You've got an interaction between those three characters, and then two characters because it's basically the Tom and Ian show for the latter part of that, and that he gives those two actors a chance to grow into their roles and the chance for us, the viewers, to get to know them. All at the same time, within the broader story of just almost this could be Doctor Who on a stage, such as the way it's set up, more so than many other programs of the time. And he just directs it wonderfully. It's a shame he didn't do more. But again, from that category of BBC directors who were so prodigious and so good at what they did at the time. But also, props to Dudley Simpson, again, who knows when to punctuate dramatic moments and knows exactly when to not do that and let the silence speak for itself.
I've got a question here about Rodney Bennett. Obviously, I enjoyed Ark In Space and all the rest of it, but yes, and using the set well with the shots we've said, to make us lead further, etc. But obviously, Roger Murray Leach will have had a big say in that anyway, and he's set it up. Right, I'm going to say it. It's still very light. I know it's supposed to be this, that, and the other, and everybody's got to argue various sins. I thought some of the editing, I thought some of it was a little bit just straightforward.
No,
I disagree, and I think one of the things is you start out in something. I quite like light horror rather than dark horror, because I think a lot of setting stuff in dark can be quite cheap in terms of trying to create an atmosphere. I think this is well done because it's true to the story, and I think that's right. I think that the difficulty sometimes with what they've got is they don't have an awful lot of things to distract you with. So I think it's really well done from that basis that it uses the spaces well, and I also think that it's interesting that it all of the characters have a reasonable amount of development, and they're not just there as being red shirts for being killed. And particularly Rogan is a very typical Robert Holmes character, and is done as light relief, and is obviously influenced by Shakespearean light relief, if we want to be I'll see about it.
Stephen O'Neill, it's a good psychological scene where the Doctor tells Sarah off for mourning and being a typical female companion, but she shows the Doctor what she's made of and proves him wrong. Good on her. Was one other one I just wanted to put up. Farsight. The scene in Aliens where the android has to go along the tunnel is a dead grinner for what Sarah has to do in the Ark. And I have to say, I remember being so scared when she was told by Vira and the other lad that basically you're now at the connection where you're going to be going past the solar
the Y junction, the Y.
And it,
Go to the right.
oh yeah, and it. I have to say again, I love that moment that led to it. You know, the fourth Doctor is, you know, it's not now, Sarah. You know, and they were trying to come up with a solution about how they were going to deal with the Riran, and then she was going, "I've got an idea. I've got an idea. Shut up, shut up." And then she's given her moment to say, "What about this?" And then, you know,
Well, let's not forget the fact that Ridley Scott very nearly was involved in Doctor Who because he was part of the BBC back in the early 60s. He was very nearly involved in An Unearthly Child in whatever capacity, I can't remember, but he was very nearly there. So he would have paid great attention to the BBC of the time. I do not doubt for one single second that a lot of what you see in Alien, the movie, can be traced back to what we see in Ark In Space. I have no doubt.
yeah, and I'm just giving everyone a chance now to just wrap up. Yanis thinks since I liked about Doctor Who, I saw the Vortex theme, and it wasn't like any other formulaic TV show. It wasn't trying to be commercial for itself. It doesn't use sex to draw me in. Well, it might do now. No, it didn't. And yes, that Vortex, you thought, right, here we go. Rob Fellows, maybe a bit late, but this series is brimming with sci-fi ideas as opposed to magic. Good point. Very good point, because there is a hell of a difference. Megan, the balance of lighting between the main control rooms and the greens and the blues of the solar stacks worked well in this. Yeah. Solar stacks is still my fave. Times mechanic, bad editing. Next on the list is wobbly sets. The real thing is suspension of belief, and this always comes down to quality of story writing. I agree. And I don't normally do a big play on editing. I just was wondering when I was watching it last night, I thought, oh, there's just a few scenes. Yeah, I don't know. Just a little bit there.
Do you do that with a modern eye, or are you looking at the time that this was made? I think often Doctor Who is judged in retrospect rather than these things were meant to be shown once, perhaps on a repeat in an omnibus at Christmas time. That was it. They weren't meant for the scrutiny that we give everything nowadays. And it's worth remembering that. And yeah, there may well be a couple of clunky moments in terms of editing, perhaps. But nonetheless, when you consider this was multi-camera in an electronic studio, done before the lights were turned up at 10 o'clock, this is really going for it.
Well, we're going to have to really go for it now and give our scores on the doors. So, of course, no accident there. I'm going for, obviously, Ark In Space. Outstanding or good or special measures or requires improvement is what we normally do. Outstanding, I mean, it's one of my go-tos. So John, obviously, just give us a moment to get to you, but what are you going to say about your judgment of it?
Yeah, Ark In Space, I don't really have, I have one favourite Doctor Who, so it's Deadly Assassin, and then I have lots of others, which sort of I would always put in my bucket list of things I have to see if I was given a time that I had to live in. But the Ark In Space would be one of those stories, purely as an example, not only of good Doctor Who, but just of good television of the time. And it's Tom Baker reaching his Doctor far too early. You know, when you think about, my goodness, what an actor, how lucky were we to have someone who got that part, got it so well, got it so quickly. And in fact, if anything, he reached his peak perhaps too soon. This is and always will be for me what it says on the screen already. Outstanding.
Yes, I wasn't leading. You know, some people say I lead the panelists. I was just half guessing. Obviously, I'd have changed it if he suddenly said something different. Obviously, it's Michelle next. Where would you like to go with your rating?
I will give this outstanding. Outstanding use of assets. Is an amazing story. It's intelligent. It's fun. I love the characters. I love the interplay between the Doctor and his companions. Outstanding.
Okay, and as I'm about to come to Hugh, Stan Up still with us, and it's good that we're now just talking about Doctor Who, but you saying so many families still use black and white TV in 76. I was lucky. I think around 73 we got a colour one, so I got to see the beauty of this era in colour. Obviously, Michelle.
No, I'd say most people had colour televisions by that stage. We got one in 74 and we weren't exactly rolling in it, so good old radio rentals.
Yes.
Yeah. It was all rental, wasn't it? It was all rental. So, Hugh, your score?
Yeah, so like it is outstanding. Again, as I said, it's a standalone four-parter written by Robert Holmes. It's pretty well guaranteed to be outstanding. It's got interesting ideas. It's done well. It's not. There's probably a level slightly above outstanding. It's probably not quite in that for me, but that's just in my mythic quality. A bit like John talking about the Deadly Assassin. It's not the Robots of Death. It's not. It's not even Carnival of Monsters for me, which got more humour. But it's outstanding, and it's pretty well perfect in every way for how you do Who.
So it's an easy one for me to say that the sense for your panel have obviously said that Ark in Space is down as outstanding. I know what you're saying, Hugh. There's outstanding and there's outstanding, but yeah, I mean it's a classic. It works. I know. I mean, there's maybe a few more thrills and spills in a few other ones. Maybe a bit more tension in a few other ones. But I have to say, this was early doors. I love the TARDIS crew. I love what they're doing with the set. I love there's a lot of interesting things going on. There's the speech. It's all there. So, John, Michelle, Hugh, thank you for your time. I mean, John, John goes mad. Let me just explain. He goes mad.
Is that the title of our next stream? John Goes Mad. Like
John
five go
goes
to
mad.
Rome.
Yeah, okay. I confirmed that years ago. No, so John, you go mad that you missed the Deadly Assassin review, and that was the one he wanted to do. So,
I meant the Horror of Fang Rock.
oh yeah.
I missed that too. Another favourite.
So we'll have to try and find something that he kind of really would like. You know me, I love to kind of do those middle ranking ones where there's a bit
What
of
about Marco
debate.
Polo?
Oh, God. So, Michelle, I'm glad that we still keep hitting some that you haven't seen, so you get that fresh take on it. Obviously, go on, advertise your book. Go on, because you've done well on it.
Haunted Fredericksburg is on Amazon and in Amazon UK, and also on July 22nd, my new book, The Ghostly Tales of Fredericksburg, is coming out.
Well done, well done. You're doing really well on that. Gosh, takes time, research, effort. You've also got a day job. And thanks a lot again, Hugh. I will obviously we'll be talking about various other things we might do, but I know the weeks just fly by, don't they? So thanks everyone. You'll find we'll find John and Hugh and Michelle are in the credits. I want to do, because it's classic review here, I want to end with a cliffhanger, as you always used to get, and then you go, what happens next week? So here we go. Thanks everybody. Here comes the cliffhanger.
Bye.